You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
This is Rod Mahood, your in-game voice of the Niagara IceDogs, and you're listening to the Dog Pound Podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your podcast source for all game analysis, team interviews, and up-to-date news regarding the Niagara IceDogs.
Perlini! Overtime! IceDogs win! Hosing! Score! To Akil Thomas. Thomas has the angle coming in. He scores!
52.1 seconds to go. Do you love it, Niagara?
Welcome into another episode of the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of your Niagara IceDogs. Proudly brought to you by Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family in all four of their great Niagara region locations. Brandon Caputo and Cam Halbert are with you to recap the IceDogs season, as well as the draft lottery results at the night of recording this. The draft lottery just happened about an hour and a half ago. We'll react to that. We've got our fan polls from what you guys thought out there of the players that you thought stuck out the most this year. As well, we'll look ahead to the OHL Draft a little bit, as we'll have plenty of time to talk about that on our 2-day live stream there for the OHL Draft coming up in April. But thank you to those today watching us on the YouTube version in video. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell if you enjoy the video versions of the podcast, as well as those listening today on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Thank you very much for doing so. Make sure to give us a follow at Dog Pound Podcast on X for all of our IceDogs content, and we're available on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff for you guys as well. So with that said, Cam, we'll start off here, and the draft lottery just happened about an hour and a half ago at the time of recording this, and the IceDogs went into the lottery with the best odds, 40%, followed by the Windsor Spitfires, Peterborough Petes, and the Sarnia Sting. And once again, the IceDogs, pull a Buffalo Sabres in the draft lottery and don't end up getting the first overall pick. And just to add a little insult to injury there, they not only fall out of first, they fall all the way to fourth with 40% odds of winning the lottery. Cam, this is a hard pill to swallow for IceDog fans, and we understand, even though it's not like there's like a consensus number one or number two guy this year, but just disappointing because the IceDogs obviously have some work to do, and getting a top 1 or 2 pick would have been big for the franchise again.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to spin this in any sort of positive light. Obviously, after last season, which was by far the franchise's worst, we ended up getting second overall, which was, again, very difficult, but I think it ended up working out, honestly, for the better. I'm still adamant on that. But obviously, just not so much. I feel bad for the players, I think, the most, because this season they took such a big step, and they, kind of got back. Last year, I don't think that they were so far and away the worst team. And this team, they beat some of the best in the league. They were in it for quite some time, and they were 2 points out of where Windsor finished, who ends up getting first overall. And obviously, if everything was 25% across the board, it is what it is, just how the lottery balls fall. To have 40% odds and finish fourth and get the fourth overall selection is just an extremely tough pill to swallow. And like I mentioned, on a franchise that still needs some assistance, they're going through a really tough time. And when only 4 teams don't make the playoffs, you don't see extended absences from the dance. You don't really see it. I think we talked about this before the show, that like Erie was on a pretty extended one since the year after McDavis. I believe it was 6 seasons, you said. So it's not there yet, but we're getting to a dangerous spot. The OHL is so cyclical in the fact that, you've got like 3 to 4 year cycles, right? And we talk about, the team being essentially devoid of talent, top end talent, other than Kevin from last year coming into the team. And then this season, they have a great draft class. But the risk you run is these guys aren't around for 8 years, right? Like, we run an issue where you need to get good quickly again so that the players want to come, the players want to stay, and then you succeed and you just build a foundation of success over the next course of time. And we run into an issue where I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I think it puts just an immense amount of pressure on whoever they selected for. That's what I think this does more than anything. The IceDogs. I mean, honestly, looking at the rosters, like just quickly looking over them, Sarnia probably needs it the most. Like not the most, but they need they have once they have, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they have Kai Schwint.
Yep.
I believe is their only NHL drafted player. Oh, and Nolan Burke, as well as Ty Voigt, but those I believe age out.
And Ty Voigt didn't even play this year.
Exactly. So he's aged out. So you've got and same with Chandler Romeo. It's the same situation there, right? Like we're gonna get hopefully our first drafted player in Kevin in quite some time.
But I'll interrupt you real quick.
Yeah,
all three of those other teams, Sarnia made the Western Conference Final last year. Windsor was supposed to make a deep run, got swept in the first round as the number 1 seed, and the Peterborough Petes won the OHL championship last year. So those are 3 teams you would expect that had to get in the turnover. So it's not like these are teams that have been in the lottery for many years, and unfortunately Niagara was the one team that's been in there quite regularly as opposed to the other 3 teams. And you just see that the luck of the draw, sometimes you can, I guess, accelerate those rebuilds like we've seen now with the Windsor Spitfires, most likely going to take the first overall pick, and it's just going to be easier for them in that sense.
Yeah, and what I was about to get to is that of all the 4 teams there, right, like Peterborough is probably going to go through a rough spell. You could see like who they were selling, and even by the end of the year, like the IceDogs were kind of pulling up to them, like they, after they made at the deadline, everything like that. But like Liam Greentree is going to go in the first round of the NHL draft, right? So now you have an NHL drafted player that's in the first round. That's going to be a dominant player. And I believe Christopoulos. No,
Anthony Cristoforo.
Cristoforo. I always mix them up. Another like high drafted NHLer. Right. So you have potentially 2 first round picks that in the NHL draft, they're going to be on Windsor. And now they get the first overall pick in this draft. Like it's just, you can see where like it's frustrating as a fan. And obviously every fan, like even all fans are going to be frustrated when they don't win the lottery. It's just like the feeling around the team was positive in the sense that there were strides made this year, and the offseason will be positive no matter what, no matter where you look at it. Like Ryan Roberg broke every franchise record that basically was there for the IceDogs. Kevin is going to get drafted, and it's like great, but it's like this 4th overall pick. It's the same thing with Ryan. Ryan had to hit, and it's hard to ask a 16-year-old like, hey, man, you can't take a year to develop. You have to be good immediately. And this is a very hard league to do that in. And it's going to be tough. Like, like it's a lot of weight on that gentleman's shoulders, and we'll have to see. But again, as a fan, super frustrating. Well, we'll get into a little bit later about like future and everything like that. But like we were talking about, like it's just you only have certain amount of time frame to take advantage of the players that you draft and develop before you have to move on from them to acquire assets because you haven't gotten there. And I really hope that we don't run into that situation with a few of our guys.
And like you said, maybe it ends up being a positive. Maybe the guy they like would have been 4th. I'm not sure, but maybe they fall into a Robrick again. When Schaefer went first, I understand the D usually is premium, but the IceDogs fell into Ryan Robrick, and it worked out. So let's hope that they can have some sort of similar history repeat itself in that sense.
This is the exact same thing that happened in the Sam Dickinson draft. Obviously, it did not play out well for the IceDogs. I would have to assume that there's not going to be the same kind of situation again now. The franchise is in a much better spot. But the IceDogs should have drafted first, and they got Sam Dickinson. Which is like, if you were to redo that draft over again, Dickinson probably goes number 1. So it's not like it's the end all be all, right? Because there's no slam dunk. This, from my understanding, this draft doesn't have the Misa. Right, like the 100%, this is who you kind of have to take, or you are taking such a risk for your job, kind of situation. So we'll see. It's not all doom and gloom, but it doesn't leave it couldn't have been fun to be the management and the players watching tonight.
And early, I guess, outlook, it's a forward-heavy draft. And I know you have we were talking about that on our game recaps, that you think they need to go forward again with their first pick. And luckily, it's a forward-heavy draft. A couple of the top defensemen might be going different routes, not Ontario Hockey League routes. So it is a forward-heavy and forward-deep draft. So maybe that will play well into Niagara's hand of what their best need or biggest need would be if they look towards a forward there.
Well, not only that, is like they're going to be put in a spot where there's already developed players. So, like, for example, whoever goes first overall, if it's a forward that plays, with Windsor, like, you're probably, if you're playing on the top line, with Greentree, like, you're set up well to succeed, right? Well, he might not be the first, like, play first line or like that, but there's the option. Whereas, like, Sarnia and Peterborough, they've got some growing to do and some, they've got to rebuild quickly. And they're both fantastic organizations, so I'm sure they will. The IceDogs, like, if whoever falls to four, if it's a forward, like, is more than likely playing with either Rubric or Kevin He. One of them, because they've split up a little bit. They've been split up near the end of the year, and I think that's probably for the best. Or Gavin Bryant, who is just an absolute dog, like, in terms of puck retrieval. So, like, whoever picked fourth as a forward is set up very, very well. And if they go defenseman, that's where, like, that pressure to succeed is going to be real tough, because, the defense is definitely where they want to improve. Personally, I'm not a GM or anything like that, but I feel like they should use a lot of their overage spots on defensemen, or at least acquire some defensemen to go with the very young forward core they have, including Gallianov and Zada. We had 4 16-year-olds. It'd be nice to, if you're going to utilize them as they should, maybe spend those overage spots on, you've got Flores and there's some other options, but at least one on a defenseman, and have them eat minutes, as opposed to heavily relying on a 16-year-old, right? Because it's going to be very tough. We saw Schaefer, like, he had a good first year, didn't do anything to hurt his draft stock. He's projected to go first round of the NHL. But, like, to get another player like that is very difficult.
And we're under the assumption at this time, because I know people were asking, that Michael Podolou and Andrew Wysick will be ready for training camp. Let's just be under that assumption right now. Haven't been told otherwise, so I'm just going to assume that both of those guys are going to be healthy enough to go for next year's training camp, have enough defensemen to be able to play, and have better depth at the center position, because we know what Podolou was really developing into before he unfortunately had his injury that put him out for the rest of the year. So you just look at the center depth, Robrick at center, if they want to put him at center, with Gavin Bryant as well, Alex Asadorian's there, Mike Podolou, you don't know what the deal is with that, and Ethan Zada as well as a center. So, like, there's the center depth, I think, is something that is a positive for this group, but adding that rookie forward to put him on the wing with, like you mentioned, either a Gavin Bryant or have him play with a Kevin He and a Ryan Robrick, especially if he's a playmaker, that's going to play right into his hands, feeding Kevin He or Ryan Robrick. So I just think that getting a couple of those guys back that didn't really play this year will just help the overall structure of the organizational depth. And like you mentioned, going out and acquiring maybe 1 or 2 defensemen to kind of round out that defensive core. You're losing a Federico and a couple other guys as well. So I just think having that overall depth be a better thing is, like, the biggest question mark and the biggest thing that they need to improve for next season, because we saw even Ben Boudreau said, limping to the finish line, for a third straight year just isn't acceptable.
No, 100%. And, like, that's another thing, is, like, he knows he's around for a while. We've talked about this all year, and this is the first time where he's going to get his first training camp, first draft, all of that, where he really gets to put a stamp on the team, along with management. But yeah, like, I think that with Podolou, and it'll be interesting what they do with their overagers. It really will be, because they have floor. We have to assume. I'll be honest with you. I think Robertson at the end of the year might have made the decision a little bit more difficult, because Flores has been so good. And if they keep him as an overager, which I would have to assume is the plan, because they rode him so long, he's been so good. But could they get something for him, or would they have a bigger advantage running someone like Charlie Robertson and then using that overage spot on the defenseman, right? Or another scoring forward? Would they get a bigger boost out of that? Because is the drop off from Flores to Robinson, that much, right? And I think the end of the season kind of made that a little bit more of a difficult conversation, as opposed to when he was first acquired from North Bay. So that's a whole other topic. But Podolou and Wysick, like Wysick specifically, he was really the best defenseman on the team all year that he was playing. And you got to remember the first 2 months of the season, while the wins weren't stacking up, man, like their losses were 1-goal losses. Like they were right there in so many games. And we'll have to see how those decisions are made. But obviously today, not a great feeling.
We're going to get to IceDogs head coach Ben Boudreau's parting thoughts after the final game. Some very interesting thoughts, and we're going to come back and react to some of those quotes that he said at the outlook of the team as they move forward here, and just some really good things that we can discuss there from what the head coach had to say after the final game and moving ahead into the offseason. So our postgame with the IceDogs head coach is brought to you by Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road in Niagara since 2012 in honor of the late William Robert Hunter. Here is IceDogs head coach Ben Boudreau following the team's last game of the season against the Sudbury Wolves this past weekend.
I like that, a heart and soul guy, go through what he just went through, because it's pretty emotional, isn't it?
Yeah, to me as a coaching hat though, like I want to coach all the way to the end, and I was still mad at how the game played out, and then you realize it's all over, and then all your feelings start coming back to the surface, and I remember at one point what my last junior game felt like, and I watched other players, what their last game and their emotions, and the same thing at the professional level, watching guys know that their career is over, and it's not easy. I mean, that's something that you do your entire life. That's your first true love, and knowing that your junior career over like Feds, especially in your hometown with over 100 family and friends, I can't imagine what those emotions are on the inside, and it's incredibly heartbreaking to see him experience those emotions. So you feel for the guy, you love the man, and you just wish it wasn't over, and you wish that you just had one more game to play. And it's like that one song, 5 more minutes. You wish you just had 5 more minutes, and you never know what you got till it's gone. So we made sure this week that we made him understand what every shift, every minute is supposed to be like, and I'm glad he enjoyed it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Speaking of the end, this is it. It's not been an easy season, and I know you haven't had a ton of time to reflect, but when you look back on this season, what do you pick out most through that what happened this season?
Well, if you're looking at the positives and the positives only, I mean, you've got 3 guys at 50 points, right? You got Kevin E., Gavin Bryant, and Rubrick. I mean, Rubrick set an organizational record that stood, since its existence with Mississauga. And you got Kevin He in his draft-eligible year scoring over 30, and you got a true captain that's going to be coming back that's just caught absolute fire. So you have your building blocks, and you look at the other guys. Ethan Zada's taken massive steps, and Galyanov and Frolov getting his first goal, and and then you look at some of the sandwich meat right in between there and some of the positive things there. So you have your building blocks of how you want to restructure and build around those guys. So you have a starting group, and now you need to go and support that group with some new faces in the off season. So as much as you want to say it's time to take some time off, we're not afforded that luxury. We have exit meetings tomorrow to understand what we did wrong and how to get better. And then you got the OHL Cup starting Monday. You got the draft on the 12th and the 13th. You got a rookie camp, and I mean, there's if you had a great season and you could put your feet up and drink away until the sun sets, I get it, but there's too much work to be done to be able to sit back and not worry about what's happening. I want to get right back at this thing and make sure we're not in the same stage for next year.
Fair enough. I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Coach, you're up 2-1 in this game. I mean, you look at it, that's a positive, and then 8 unanswered from the opposition, just some defensive zone breakdowns and a lot of learning lessons. Like when you have a lead like that against a team and things start to unravel, is that a lot of on-the-bench coaching that you're trying to say, okay, this is where we need to improve for next year, or is that something you guys will look at in the tape of saying, we had a lead against these guys, and these are the things we have to work on if we want to get more competitive next year and really take it to them?
Oh, even at the end of the season, I mean, emotions are high, and it's a lot of guys' last game, and you could say, good job and everything, but my coaching hat was still on, and I was still giving the guys crap for the way they played in the last 2 periods. I mean, you have a great team effort in the first 20, and they come out and play an individual brand of hockey that nothing has. We haven't seen that brand here in a little bit, but when you play as a team, you can have success. You play as an individual, and everybody's going to lose as an individual, and that's what we did. 8 unanswered goals, lots of frustration, sloppy hockey, but it was just a mentality that changed. Okay, we're having a little bit of success success, but we didn't play 60 minutes, and we played 20 minutes, at that, and that's frustrating and upsetting that that's going to be your last thought, knowing how far away from a really good Sudbury team that we are, and unless we play as a team, we're not going to accomplish anything. So you make sure you have the right guys that are going to play the right way for 60 minutes, and that's going to be our big challenge, is making sure that we start next year with those right guys in our lineup.
That sour taste, is that something that you let them know? The guys that are going to be here, remember this, remember all the knocks you took on the chin this year, to hopefully know that you don't want to go through this again next year, to try to come out of it better and make sure that they're motivated enough when they go into that summertime, that they come back in September ready to go for training camp, because it's going to be a very tough one with you getting a full season in doing so.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to my first full season at the helm, to be honest. But I mean, you look at the game, and it's not a pat on the back. It's completely unacceptable. And the guys that think it is acceptable, we don't want in the dressing room. And it shouldn't be like that, where in your last game you're writing about that. But that's the difference between winning and losing. It's a mentality, and when you don't have the right mentality, you're not here for the right reasons, you're not going to be a part of this thing going forward. And for us, we've got a great group of guys in there, and we're going to have a great group to build on that. But those type of games, that type of mentality is unacceptable, and we're not going to be in this position next year. We can't afford it from a fan standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, and from a reputation standpoint. We want guys coming to Niagara. We want to be known as a competitive team, and like I said, we've got a good group of young guys that we got to support and implement a culture around them that it's unacceptable to play like that.
And lastly, just about you personally, what would be your message to the fans as far as what you've brought to the team this year with your passion and being back home in St. Catharines? It was big for you. We talked to you at training camp, and now taking over as the head coach. Like, just how much pride and effort do you put into making sure that you want to get this thing turned around into a winner as soon as possible with what you do on a daily basis for this group, and trying to make them better at all times?
Oh, the fans are unbelievable. In every pocket of every city, that still come out over 5,000 on your last game on a last place team. I mean, I think it's absolutely incredible, and there's only one thing that we need from the fans, and that's patience. We will make sure that the ship is turned in the right direction. We're all going to make sure that we have this thing going the right way. So all we need them is to be patient, and we'll reward their patience. And this isn't a quick or easy fix. I don't want it to be anyways. We got to make sure that we stick to the plan that's in place, grow and develop our own homegrown talent here, and make sure that we build around these guys and learn the lessons together, but also at the same time too be victorious together. So we know we've got some really good years ahead of us with our young core group. It's time to implement and a culture, which we have been doing, and then go and find a way to support them with a good group of another great draft class, and keep developing our guys here. So like I said, this is probably the worst position that we'll be in here over the next however many years. And so you remember what that feels like to be on the losing end, and when we're on the opposite side like Sudbury is going to be, then you can remember all those struggles and what it took to get there.
Thanks for the time all season long, Coach.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
There was IceDogs head coach Ben Boudreau. Cam, a lot of good thoughts there in the 7-minute or so press conference. I wrote down a couple of quotes here, but I'll just kind of get your first reactions to what the IceDogs head coach said. Very candid as always. Very honest with us, which is great for us who cover the team to be able to not just get the generic hockey answers, but he really talked about a lot of things there, and I'll kind of let you start it off before I go over the quotes that I had written down.
I appreciate his transparency all year. I think that's something that's kind of a breath of fresh air, and I think that's kind of what the franchise needed. I think that he cares a ton. Obviously, every coach cares about their team, right? But I think that he comes in with the knowledge that he is going to be around for a little while. And I think that what that allows him to do is build his team and help develop these guys to not just win hockey games, but to further their careers. Because even if you don't get drafted in the NHL, I feel like a lot of people think they're like, oh, it's just done. A lot of these guys got to play NCAA, or in other leagues, right? And it doesn't mean that their career is over with by any stretch of the imagination. So I just think that, the way that he is accountable, and he makes his players accountable. And that's kind of been like my favorite thought so far of just him this year. But why don't we go through the quotes and we'll just go one by one.
So this was the most one that stuck out to me the most. This is probably the worst position we'll be in the coming years. So you remember what that feels like to be on the losing end, and what when we're on the opposite side, winning, you can remember the struggles it took to get there. So he understands that, they're basically at ground zero, and when they eventually start to move up there, they'll kind of remember what they went through during these last couple of seasons.
It's funny because like the one thing that has been kind of an issue this year is that when they had the lead or when they were tied late, they would lose. And it was almost like they weren't comfortable with winning. And that sounds silly, but there is a way to close out hockey games. There's a mentality. There's a way that you play. And a lot of the issues were self-inflicted near the end of games. And it's, again, when you've lost so much over the last 2 seasons, you're not comfortable with winning. Like, that's just simply because you got the other team just pushing relentlessly, and you're trying to just hang on. And we saw a lot of those games where they were just trying to hang on. And a lot of it just came down to like hoping the goaltending held up. But I think he's bang on there, because I think that in 2 years, even next year, again, it's tough to be positive or tough to be super optimistic after today, but I don't really think that going from 1 to 4 really changes much. Maybe it does, but I don't think it really does that much. But in 2 years from now, when they're going, they finish 5th or 4th in the conference, and there's those games where you're up by 1 and you remember what it was like to be losing like that. That's what I think it matters. Like, I think that's what he's referring to. And I think that it's a very accurate statement for these guys that are going through it right now, to understand. And you also got to remember that, like, again, like a lot of these guys, so Bryant will be, he only has a few years, right? Like, I believe next year's not his overage year, right?
It sure
is.
is.
Next year's is, I thought his birthday was 1 year. So next year is his overage year, right? Like, he won't be here the year after, obviously. But Galyanov, Robrick, and Frolov and Zada, they're here for at least 3 or 4. So that's a large portion of the team from one draft class that will be here and will remember that. I think that's what he's referring to more of, is those guys that are very young, because a lot of the team was young.
And he talked about it's time to implement and go support them with another great draft class and keep developing our guys. We have to make sure that we stick to the plan that's in place, grow and develop our homegrown talent here, and make sure we build around these guys, learn the lessons together, but also be victorious together.
I mean, like we've talked about this ad nauseum this whole year. It's like, I don't know. I mean, we could go and look, but statistically, we had to have had one of the best draft classes. Like, because how many true 16-year-olds after the first round have an impact? Like, to have 4 that were, Galyanov came along offensively, and he was scratched for the first month of the season, right? Couldn't get into the lineup, but he became like a pretty big fixture. Not only that, he's a big agitator. Zada, I could see Zada is going to be probably the most interesting player to watch next year. Because being so highly drafted, 5th overall, made Team Canada under 17s, right? But you would have to assume he's not super satisfied with his offensive output this year.
You'd think there'd be a big jump.
Exactly. Like, if he goes from, if he goes from 17 points in 62 games this year to 30 or 40, maybe even 50, then that's on the high end, right? If he has another season where it's like 20 points, then he really has to become either great at the draw or an unbelievable penalty killer and extremely. I mean, we saw he dropped the gloves a couple times as a 16-year-old. He did it in his second game, right? Like, so he's definitely the most interesting player of all of them to watch. And then you have Frolov, who was steady Eddie the whole season, and he got chippy near the end of the year. So, like, a lot of these guys, like, they're going to be around for a while, and I think that they're only going to grow. That being said, if they have one more draft class like that, it's going to be hard to not make the playoffs. Like, that's the reality of the situation. Like, it'll be tough to not make the playoffs if they have another 3, not even 4. I think 4 is a lot to have 4 roster players that are in your roster and your lineup the whole time that would be on other OHL teams. I think it would be, you have 2 or 3 more and you're flying.
Yeah, and we'll see what they do with trades and things like that in the offseason as well. But, yeah, Ethan Zada, I think if he really takes a big step this year, it's just going to show that draft class was even better, because I think there's a lot of pressure going on him into his second year. The IceDogs had 2 first-round picks last year, which doesn't happen a lot in the Ontario Hockey League. So Robrick was obviously a hit, leading all rookies and breaking records with the IceDogs as far as goals as a 16-year-old, points for rookies. So just an incredible season for a 16-year-old for Ryan Robrick, who won't even be draft eligible for 2 more years, which is unbelievable to think that he was a late September birthday, so he won't be eligible for the 2025 NHL draft. He'll be even better in his draft year because that'll be his 3rd year in the Ontario Hockey League.
Like, I'm just gonna give you again, we didn't even realize it till late in the year, like a couple weeks ago, right? And elite prospects, right? Elite prospects, their website, they had like Robrick in the 2026 draft at 4th in the NHL draft. So and he did nothing to hurt his stock this year. Right? Like, it's not like he was expected to hit that and had a mediocre season. I would have to say, exceeded. Like, I would love to talk to some NHL scouts or people in management, that handle like pro drafts. But I cannot imagine him putting up 28 goals in 63 games as a 16-year-old on Niagara. Like, that's the thing. Obviously, he gets the minutes, but the fact that he still did it, with essentially the least amount of help. Not that, his line mates were inferior, but like, what I'm saying? Like, as a team, they're always down. Like, it's just impressive. But like you mentioned, puts a lot of pressure on Zada, because right behind Zada went Jake O'Brien, who had 64 points as a rookie this year, right? He went 8th. So, and again, you don't have to be this, you don't have to be a 70-point player in your second season if you to be successful. But if he's not going to be an offensive powerhouse, and we saw a little bit of flash from him, but it was in that middle part of the season. Like, there was a point where he had like, I want to say half his points in like 7 games. It was odd because it didn't continue.
Yeah,
right?
It took him a while to get his first goal.
Yeah, and then, but like, that being said, he played center pretty much the whole year for the most part.
He played center more than Robrick did.
100%, because Robrick it seemed to be an experiment near the end of the year when there was just injuries. I would love to hear from Ben about like their plans in future about Ryan, but we probably won't know that until we see the training camp. But if Zada could be what Gavin Bryan is in not next season, but the year after, that's fine. Like, that's a success, right? I think Galyanov and Frolov, if they marginally improve, that's a win. You get like 2nd and 3rd round in the OHL, right? Like, I mean, we had to have the best 2nd round pick last year in Kevin.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, you do that enough, and it's like I said, it's hard to not succeed. So we'll have to wait and see, though. We do have the first pick of the 2nd round this year.
Exactly. So
can't take that away from us.
Yeah, the lottery results are only for the first round. So the IceDogs will be picking first in the 2nd round, if you want to call it a late first, what have you. So the last quote before we move on, Cam, and it's a good one for the fans here to listen to. Ben Boudreau, the fans are unbelievable. Still come out with over 5,000 in your last game and a last place team. There's only one thing we need from the fans, and that's patience. We will make sure this ship gets turned around in the right direction. All we need is patience, and we will reward their patience. This isn't a quick and easy fix for me, at least.
I love that. Again, as a fan, the IceDog fans are mind-blowing. 4 straight years of not making the playoffs. Last year, we were 4th in attendance. This season, we were 8th. And like, that's absurd. It really is, because it just shows like what it means when the team is remember his first quote about this. Remember what it feels like to be this bad, because this is the worst. I can't wait to see a playoff run. The city will shut down. Like, St. Catharines will be a zoo for it. And I can't wait, because these guys all deserve that. Like, and the fans, again, I've been a fan now the last 5 years, and it's been tough, but everyone shows up, and it's crazy to think about. I want to also, before I forget, like, the first pick of the 2nd round, or the last pick of the 1st round, was Hunter Brestevich last year. So like, that 2nd over Travis Hayes was actually the pick spot that we will have our 2nd overall pick. So like, it's not all doom and gloom.
No, as Ben Boudreau said as well a couple games before that it's not all doom and gloom, and they've got a bright future here. Just have to put the right pieces around this bright young core. So we'll see how that goes going into the offseason. And as we get into our OHL Draft live stream, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that over those 2 days. But we're going to take a break here on our season in review show. We're going to come back. We're going to get our fan polls as well as look ahead to the offseason for the IceDogs. So stay right back on the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of your Niagara IceDogs, proudly brought to you by Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family.
Pets bring immense joy to our homes, becoming an integral part of our families. But this living, loving experience often requires a little extra care and attention. That's where Global Pet Foods comes in, with owners and staff ready to support you every step of the way. Check out one of their locations today. 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, or 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family. Proud to sponsor the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of the Niagara IceDogs. J&L Flooring is Niagara's specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride and provide elite customer service and support. With a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety of truly unique products, J&L Flooring is your specialty flooring and decor boutique shop. All of their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel good about your flooring choices. Their goal is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity. Offering a unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team, they simplify the process to make your life easier and to make your home more beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road in Niagara Falls or find out more at jnlflooring.com. If you think you can get a better deal anywhere else, you don't know Jack at J&L Flooring.
Niagara Golf Lounge features 2 state-of-the-art indoor golf simulators, allowing you to play some of the world's best courses all year round. The perfect place to indulge all season long. Don't worry about getting thirsty while you play around with your friends. Their fully stocked bar offers a wide selection of drinks, appetizers, and a variety of meals are also available to enjoy before, during, or after you play. Grab a seat next to the fire in their comfortable sports lounge. Didn't bring your clubs? No problem. They have partnered with TaylorMade to offer you the best rental clubs. You won't want to miss their exclusive NFL and NHL giveaways for the Buffalo Sabres and Buffalo Bills. Located in the Best Western Plus Karen Croft Hotel, 6400 Lundy's Lane in Niagara Falls. Visit NiagaraGolfVacations.com to learn more and to reserve your golf bay today. The Niagara Golf Lounge, Niagara's home for golf and sport all year round.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, Better Jobs Ontario information and registration assistance, and you can check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Center, helping people find work since 1983.
This is Alex Asadorian.
Hey, it's Ryan Robrick.
This is Ivan Gallianoff.
This is Gavin Bryant.
And this is the
Dog Pound Podcast,
the official podcast of the Niagara IceDogs.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Dog Pound Podcast and our season in review show. Brandon Caputo and Cam Halbert are with you. The Dog Pound Podcast is proudly brought to you by Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family in all 4 of the great Niagara region locations, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to those today watching us on the video version on YouTube, and to those listening to us today in on-demand audio. Make sure to give us a love on whatever platform you're choosing to listen to us today as well. Give us a follow at Dog Pound Podcast for all of our IceDogs content. So on part 2 of today's season in review show, we're going to go over what you guys thought out there. We put out some polls on at Dog Pound Podcast on X or Twitter or whatever you call it these days. And we're going to get into that as well with Cam's, I guess, is going to react to these as well. And we'll just kind of look ahead to the offseason with what we think the IceDogs will need to do at the upcoming OHL Draft and as well as in the offseason. So, Cam, we'll start off hot here with the polls. which player was the most valuable to the team this season? And this was really, really close between the 4 candidates here, and all 4 of them had fantastic seasons for the IceDogs, and I think all 4 could be given credit for this award. But Ryan Robrick, Kevin He, Gavin Bryant, Owen Flores, and it's Captain Gavin Bryant, or O'Bryant, as Rod Mahood called him on St. Patrick's Day. Gavin Bryant takes this one 32.4%. Second place was Kevin He at 27%. Owen Flores and Ryan Robrick, 3rd and 4th, respectively. I'm kind of shocked with Gavin Bryant, not for the fact that I don't think he deserved it, but I think for the fact that with how flashy Kevin and Ryan were this year, that people really appreciated what Gavin Bryant brought to this team all around.
It's funny because I was about to say, like, regardless how it finished, I was actually going to say Gavin Bryant. Like, first of all, he led the team in points, which I feel like a lot of people don't realize. They just assume that Kevin did. Now, Kevin missed the last few games, but Gavin only played in 62. And his, like, offensive output, this season shattered his career highs. Like, his career high as a rookie had 38 points in 63 games. And then he had 26 and 30 last year. So he's almost a point per game, but he missed half the season. And then he had 54 this season in 62. So he's just been a great OHLer. But on top of that, he became a captain. And I feel like it's not easy to just be the captain in the OHL or any hockey team for sure. And when you put some people in it that maybe aren't the right fit, it doesn't always go well. Gavin was like a perfect fit, and it really made the team seem to come together near the end of the year when things were going poorly. On top of that, like, Kevin has unbelievable talents, is definitely the best skater on the team, one of the best skaters in the OHL. His shot is great, and he's going to be an NHL drafted player. Gavin, is in a way a great OHLer, but he just works hard every shift. And without him, like, I try to think, like, you remove Gavin from the team, he's probably worth like 6 points in the standings. Like, he was OHL Player of the Week, right? Like, there was a time where, like, that when they were succeeding, he was the biggest part of it.
But also what he brings in the room as well, keeping those guys together.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what makes it so important. So I'm actually on board with that. It probably would have went in that order. Gavin and then Kevin for me. It might have been Flores 3rd, because the first start of the season, like, had he not been playing as well as he did, then we might be talking about how they're in the 30s for points. But I think that's pretty bang on. I agree with Gavin, number 1.
And hats off to all 4 of those guys, though. Clearly,
it's not a big difference.
No, absolutely not. Our next poll is, which IceDog player was the biggest pleasant surprise for you this season? Matthew Paris, Mike Levin, Urban Podrekar, and Charlie Robertson. Charlie Robertson takes this poll 37.5%. Mike Levin second at 28.1%, and then Urban Podrekar and Matthew Paris. All 4 of these guys, I think fans, we didn't really know what to expect from them, especially Levin and Paris. Really didn't get a lot of opportunity with the London Knights, and then you had Charlie Robertson, who was behind Dom DiVincentis, wasn't going to get an opportunity there. And Podrekar is an import player, his first year playing in North America. Don't really know what to expect when those guys come over, but I think all 4 of those guys had solid contributions for the IceDogs this year.
I agree. I like it. It's funny because I think that Charlie's this might be some recency bias, is why I think Robertson might have won. But that being said, there was times throughout the year where each one of them could have been that. Like, each one of them. Like, there was a time where Levin was leading the team in goals. Like, he was, and remember, I believe it was Paris who had the 5-point game early on in the season. Like, beginning parts of the season, Matthew Paris was like our best player, right? And he had a really quiet finish. He was also injured for a large portion. I don't know what happened with Levin in terms of his finish to the season. Because he was really a driver before he went away to the World Juniors for Israel.
Yeah, the World Championships, and he dominated over there.
Yeah, and when he came back, he was very quiet. And what I mean by that is that you don't put up it's not that he needs to be scoring, but like what he was doing is that he was feisty. We saw that throughout the year. Like, he is not the biggest kid, and he wouldn't back down from anyone. And we didn't see a ton of it as the season went, like at the end of the season. You know what I mean? He had a very quiet finish. Because he would have been my pick. Levin would have been my pick. I actually don't know.
Robertson played so good at the end of the year.
I'll
though,
say Robertson because he made it a genuine discussion to be like, what happens with Flores next year, which I never thought would have been a possibility. I thought that he is going to be the backup goalie next year, and it's now, I think, an actual question.
And it was wild when he took off because it was a bit of a shaky game in Peterborough, and even Ben Boudreau had said in the postgame, like, it wasn't one of Charlie's best games. But after he had that kind of setback game in Peterborough, he really took off. He ended up getting 3 of 4 starts the next week, won OHL Goalie of the Week, and then was even shutting out the Mississauga Steelheads there before he had to leave the game due to an injury when he was down 3 times in that game, had a 43 save shutout going with 8 minutes left, and unfortunately had to leave. So I think what Charlie Robertson showed them in the last week and a half is that they do have 2 number 1 goaltenders in this league, and it's going to be a tough decision, but a good decision. Like it's a good problem to have that you have 2 number 1 goalies, and you'll have to make a decision at some point.
I'm gonna go with Padre Carr. We talked about him so much at training camp, and then we didn't talk about him really at all throughout the year because I think that early on he was kind of flashy, and then he had the most points among defensemen at 22. And the next closest on D was Van Netten.
And he probably had more opportunity on the power play because Andrew Weissig was out for most of the year.
100%. But I mean, I second guessed myself. I didn't even think he had 20 points. But I think that he has the potential chance to be, a 30 or plus point defenseman, because he is someone that was rather good offensively at breaking the puck out. I'll go with Padre Carr. Any of these options, again, same thing. So I'm not surprised. Any of them had their moments throughout the year.
And then, which IceDog player improved the most during the season as it went along? Ivan Galyanov, Artem Frolov, we talked a lot about in the first segment today. Callum Chanowski and Mason Ray, the 2 newcomers from the Brantford Bulldogs after the trade deadline. Ivan Galyanov and Artem Frolov split this poll, so co-winners there at 40%, followed by Ray and Chanowski. But can't really complain about that with what Galyanov brought as a 4th-round pick, making the team as a 16-year-old at a training camp, and Artem Frolov, a 2nd-round pick defenseman, as a 16-year-old, logging a ton of minutes, especially on a team that didn't have 6 defensemen for most of the year. He really had a lot of trial by error and really got better as the season went along, started to get more of an offensive opportunity near the end of the year. Ben Boudreau wanted to showcase him in that role, so I don't think there's any debate on Galyanov and Frolov kind of co-winning this poll.
I was about to say the same thing. Like, Galliano, first of all, didn't even start, was scratched the first 8 games of the season, right? So it didn't even look like he would play unless without injury. And then the coaching change happened and he was thrusting. There was times where he was in the first line center. Frolov, he was quiet the whole time, the whole season. But as the season went along, he got chippy. And that's an element that I don't think we expected from him. Without looking, do you have any penalty minutes he had?
Nope.
He had 43, which is 4th on the IceDogs. That's surprising to me that he had that many penalty minutes.
And he was feisty. He stood up to Adam Zidlicki, who's not he's a tough customer for Mississauga.
Yeah, absurd. And we didn't. So I agree. Same situation. Both of those guys are deserving of it because Galyanov came out and, again, offensively, I didn't anticipate that he would have a 4th-round pick in the OHL. Again, first year is you maybe under 10 points. And so he had 24 points in 60 games. And a lot of that came in, again, the same kind of thing with Zada, where it was like a 10 to 15 game span where a lot of it happened. But he was so good near the end, so reliant on that aspect that both of them are great.
Both spark plugs for sure. And I think with Ray and Chanowski, I liked what I saw from Ray near the end of the year. I feel like the first month or so when he got to Niagara, he was trying to get his feet wet a little bit, but we see the big body, and if he can use that, he's a big guy, but he can move. So I think once we started to see him use that shot a little bit more, we can see why this guy was a 2nd-round pick by the Bulldogs just a few years ago. And even Chanowski banged up near the end of the year, but I think it was his first time getting or logging a lot of minutes in the OHL, because when he was with Brantford, he was in and out of the lineup, maybe was the 6th defenseman here or there, but he was logging top 4 minutes and learning what it's like to play 20, 24 minutes in this league. So I think both those guys earning a bigger opportunity here in Niagara, coming from a loaded Brantford team where they really didn't have an opportunity. I think both those guys started to find themselves and really figure out what they can be in this league once getting more of an opportunity in the last month and a half with Niagara.
Absolutely. And Ray was a second round pick and Chanowski was a third round pick. So it's not like they were, cast offs or something like that. They were high draft picks. So um I think that Chanowski, we need Chanowski to be kind of a hit, I think, which is, I think because I think that on forward, kind of going in what happened last year in the training camp, kind of surprisingly had tough decisions to make, you know? I can't wait for training camp already. Like, just because I'm so curious to see how the team shakes out. And obviously trades are going to happen and things like that. But there's a lot of options. Like, and I'm excited because, the better the team gets, the harder the team is to make.
And then the last poll is, which Ice Dog player was an unsung hero this season who flew under the radar with the contributions they made to the team? Overage defenseman Connor Federko, Ryan Van Netten on defense as well, Ethan Zada on forward, and William Stewart. Taking this poll was Connor Federko at 42.1%. Van Netten was second, William Stewart third. All four of those guys kind of flew under the radar because they weren't big point producers, and we talked a lot about Zada. But Federko wins this award. I think it's well-deserved because a guy that comes over from the London Knights, a great career over there, comes to his hometown team, and on a team that's still learning and developing, he didn't pout about it. He just went out there and did his job every single night and showed those guys that even as an overager, you got to put in the work and do all the dirty work and do all the things that you need to stick up for your teammates and not all the glamorous stuff all the time. And I think the players loved Connor Federko for that, and that's why he got such a great send-off there in his last game with Niagara.
Yeah, no disrespect to the other three players. This is Federko, and it's not even close. Like, it just is. Like, I equate this to another team in our area, but like Alex Tuck playing with the Buffalo Sabres, like, to get a player that wants to play for a team that is not successful is a very rare quality, because how many players, they don't do well on that team, they immediately want to move. First thing they want to do is run away, right? And obviously Federko's from here, right? Makes sense. It's his last year in the OHL, wants to be close to home, but still, he could have just played out his time here. He, I don't know how he didn't get hurt. He plays just relentlessly. He stood up for all of his teammates, understood his assignment that he has got to be the one that is the physical driving force of the team. And I don't know how they replace him. I really don't. That's something that is going to be very difficult. And while he wasn't a point producer, he did not make it easy on anyone. So it was him, and that one should have been
100%. Quick thoughts on the other guys, though. William Stewart, was a bottom six guy, but played his role well, even chipped in with a few goals near the end of the year. It's not easy playing in a bottom end role on a team and knowing that you're going to be stuck there, but being able to contribute near the end of the year. Van Netten was a guy that wasn't flashy, didn't put up a lot of points, but he was reliable for Ben Boudreau. He was in the lineup at all times, play up and down his defensive lines whenever they needed him because they went through so many injuries. And even Zada that we mentioned in the first part of the year, I don't think points are really going to be the thing that is his biggest strong suit. It's going to be the stuff that he does, in the faceoff dot, away from the puck, the way that he plays away from the puck, the way that he plays as a defensive forward. Those are the biggest things for Ethan Zada that's going to make him stand out, that Wes already talked about. Every team needs an Ethan Zada to win. So I think those other three guys, even though Federko deserved the award at the end of the day, I think those other three guys definitely made an impact under the radar, not like the big point producers like the Robricks and the Hees and the Bryants.
I don't know if there was a bigger team favorite from the players than William Stewart. They just loved for him to succeed, and that, you need that camaraderie, right? And you're right, William Stewart was definitely the extra forward at the beginning of the year and throughout the season, and then when he came in, he was one of the more physical ones and understood his role in that aspect. And Zada as well, I think you nailed it perfectly. He is, next season there's going to be, I would assume, a focus to get him more offense, to get him, improving offensively. But I think that a lot of pressure comes with being fifth overall. And there's a reason why he's picked to the under 17s for Team Canada. That's not easy to be a part of regardless. So for sure, I think that no disrespect to the other guys in Federko. It's just, Federko is just a rare person for that aspect.
And congratulations to him, and wish him all the best in the next portion of his hockey career, whether that be overseas or U Sports. Connor Federico will always be loved for the 1 year that he spent here with the Niagara IceDogs, and I'm really glad that they were able to give him the ceremony that he deserved and giving him that farewell at the end of the game. Had over 100 friends and family there at the game, so it was really emotional and a great send-off for him, despite them losing to the Sudbury Wolves. But thank you to everybody for contributing to our fan polls all season long, and we'll look forward to doing more of those next year or next season. So, Cam, before we wrap up our season in review, let's look at the OHL standings. And you look at it, the IceDogs were last. They were 18 points away from being a playoff team, but like you mentioned, 30 points last year was obviously an improvement from that. And even though they lost 9 of their last 11 games, You saw that it was just a numbers game at the end of the year, and all those other teams were gearing up for the playoffs. The IceDogs had some injuries and really limped to the finish line, but midway through the year, they were still competitive and right in that race up until probably, I'd say, 3 or 4 weeks left in the year when Barrie finally pulled away. But you look at it, I mean, there's going to be some teams selling that are going to go on deep playoff runs this year that are going to need to recoup some draft picks. I look at teams like the North Bay Battalion. I look at teams like the Sudbury Wolves, and you think about it, the IceDogs and the Peterborough Pete's kind of in that same area. A lot of young talent, but we'll see how they kind of round out the rest of their team. So although they were 18 points out of a playoff spot here, Cam, really, to me, they're only going to have to jump 2 teams, and that's encouraging in that sense because there's going to be some turnover in the league in the offseason.
Yeah, like I would, again, like you just looking at rosters, and you can't really determine because a lot of the players that you don't get to see a ton of, and just because they're not NHL drafted players doesn't mean that they're not good OHLers, right? Like the example would be Gavin Bryant, right? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, he's not an NHL drafted player, so he's not great. You'd have to assume that Peterborough is going to be at the beginning of their rebuild, right? And that the IceDogs, I think that if they don't pass the Peterborough Petes this year, something went catastrophically wrong, right? So we're talking about one other team, and we saw it happen with Windsor. Windsor was an OHL championship bound team that fell apart in the first round, but their roster was one of the best that you've seen in OHL teams. And they finished, tied or 2 points ahead of the IceDogs this year. So North Bay and Peterborough, right? Like it's only 2 teams, right? Don't look at the points, look at the teams they've got to pass. And you make a good point, right? And we'll have to wait and see. I think that, you don't even need improvements. Like, you're going to see natural improvements in Kevin for sure. I think that that's just what happens. I would love to see a stat of NHL drafted players or even players that get invited to NHL camps and their trajectory and point production and just play. I would say that it very rarely goes down, right? Like, or at least stays the same as what it was going into it. And then Ryan, as a 16-year-old, like, it's crazy to me that, like, because he had a good season for any OHLer, right? As a 16-year-old, that's impressive. And he led the rookies in scoring. Like, there's a potential chance we have a 40-goal scorer in the OHL on our hands here, right? And that's exciting. So, you just need everyone else to stay status quo, not even improve, but there's going to be improvement for sure, specifically on defense. Like, I don't know what they do there. And their overage questions, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, especially in net now. I think that's going to be a tough one.
So, Cam, as we wrap up this season for the IceDogs 23-24, the next time we'll be on here is most likely the OHL Draft, and looking ahead to the next season, what's going to be your biggest takeaway from this season as we finish off the season in review? Is it going to be Ryan Robrick breaking almost every rookie record for the IceDogs? Is it the whole draft class? Is it Kevin He going to break through the glass ceiling? Is it Gavin Bryant as the captain? Ben Boudreau as a head coach? Like, there's a lot of things you can choose here as far as the biggest positive takeaway, but what was yours for your first season covering the Niagara IceDogs here for the Dog Pound podcast?
I think it was fun watching the team from a different lens. I think that covering a team or watching a team as opposed to watching the game, you don't just watch the puck. Like, when you watch hockey, you're just chasing the puck. Whereas when you're covering the team, you're watching the IceDogs, like, at all times, regardless who has the puck or whatnot. So, which has been, I still got a lot of things to improve upon in terms of covering and things like that. But watching things like not just goals and assists, but like how their edge work is, and do they back check all the way through, or do they coast at the end? Like those little things that you slowly start to watch and pay attention for and see about tendencies and improvement. I think that Kevin last year was such an impressive story given the situation. That team will probably be the worst team that we've had in franchise history for the next, again, it would be something catastrophic to get back there again. And Kevin was a second round pick, and he just did not care that the team was terrible. And he proved upon it, and he had a rough start to the season, I think, because he was trying to do everything too much. How many times did we see him try to go 1-on-4 early on in the year before he settled down and started to just dominate again? I think that it's so huge for the team to get an NHL drafted player. I think that is something that the team hasn't had since Akil, if memory serves.
Phil Tomasino.
And Phil Tomasino who was first? I think Akil was first.
Akil was 2018. Tomasino was 19.
It was 19. You're correct. Yeah. So since Tomasino, that's just huge for the franchise, right? We talked about how important that is, not just for the franchise to succeed, but players that want to come here because now there's NHL scouts. We saw how many scouts did we see throughout the year that come and watch teams play the IceDogs, right? We saw Dubas in attendance
for Ottawa.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's super important. I think that Kevin is one of the most important players in the team. Robrick is going the following season when it's his draft, which is crazy to think about. That it's not even next year, right? In his draft year, like, we are going to have national attention. Again, unless something goes catastrophically wrong, the IceDogs will be under a Canadian that is the potential to go top 5 in the NHL draft will be a focus. And that's the year where next year, I think what my biggest takeaway from this year, we're an OHL team again. As silly as that sounds, last year we were not an OHL team. We weren't. It was just a team in the league, but we were dominated. It wasn't the same talent level, all that. I think this year we're an OHL team, and next year we're going to be a team that battles for the playoffs even later, and maybe a playoff team if things break right. It's all just about that 2 years from now. It really is. For me as a fan, I think that it's that 2 years from now, which sucks to say, right? I don't want to write off next year already, but a lot of things for the future that made me have hope that we didn't have going at this time last year.
Make the playoffs next year, and I think that is what head coach Ben Boudreau, and since he took over, the long-term play is there, but he does not want to go through another season like this, and understands that the fan base has been through a lot here and knows that they have to build this thing back up, the right way, but, decently quickly here. And a playoff team next year would be the goal. I don't think anybody else would say that it's not. And if it isn't, then I would say it's a failed season. So I don't think anybody wants to go through what they did the last 2 years. But again, 2 years ago was as rock bottom as you can get. This year was better, but still a lot of improvement to be done. But as Ben Boudreau said, 5,000 fans came out that final night of the season for the IceDogs against Sudbury, even in a 9-2 game, that they were still cheering all the way to the end. And just want to say thank you on behalf of Cam and myself to all the IceDog fans for who invested their time when it was difficult at times, believe us, to watch the team this year and going through the growing pains. Hopefully, as Ben Boudreau said, they will reward their patience. And thank you to everybody that's kind of tuned in to our game recaps throughout the year, our monthly wrap-up shows. We really appreciate all the support, and we look forward to building with you guys and with the team as we move forward to some brighter days. And Cam's first year covering the team as well. It's been fun having him on board. So Cam, really appreciate you and everybody listening and watching us all season long.
Couldn't send him better, man. And again, I appreciate everyone tuning in and putting up with me. It was a fun year to cover the team, and I can't wait to get started again with our draft show.
Absolutely. So that's going to wrap up our season in review for the Niagara IceDogs 2023-2024 season here on the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of your Niagara IceDogs. Proudly brought to you by Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family in all 4 of their great Niagara region locations. For Cam Halbert, my name is Brandon Caputo. We'll talk to you again in a few weeks for our OHL Draft live coverage from the IceDogs rink there at the Meridian Center. Should be a fun time, and look forward to seeing how the OHL Cup rolls around. And with the OHL Draft rankings, the IceDogs will be picking 4th overall. So until next time, this has been another episode on the Armchair GM Sports Network, and we'll talk to you again very soon. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.